Hello and welcome to the Orthodox View, where we discuss latest religious news from an Orthodox Christian perspective. I am its host, Philip Champion. Thousands of women accused of witchcraft in Scotland are set to be posthumously pardoned after almost 300 years. The Scottish Parliament will consider a petition for the rehabilitation of those who were convicted under the Witchcraft Act between 1563 and 1736. Of the approximate 4,000 people accused, over half were executed, and more than 85% of those convicted were women or girls. The petition had been instigated by Claire Mitchell, who leads Witches of Scotland, a group campaigning for a pardon, a government apology, and an official monument for the victims. The administration of Prime Minister Nicola Sturgeon has already backed the initiative. Archival documents testify to the absurdity of accusations of witchcraft. Women's crimes ranged from causing hangovers and turning into an owl, to meeting with the devil and conjuring up storms to sink the ships of King James VI. Witchcraft laws passed by James IV of Scotland led to a nationwide search for witches that became known as the Great Scottish Witch Hunt of 1597. It was the second of 5 national witch hunts in Scottish history. According to the various sources, about 200 people were executed in just 1 year. The witch hunt was supported by the Roman Catholic Church throughout Western Europe. Modern researchers estimate that between 1450 and 1750, tens of thousands of women were executed as witches across the continent. It is interesting that the witchcraft hysteria, so typical for Western Europe, was not present in the Russian kingdom, since Orthodox theologians, unlike their Catholic and Protestant colleagues, were not so much absorbed in the idea of the sinfulness of the flesh. Pope Francis characterized domestic violence against women as satanic. He made his statement while communicating with people who suffered from abuse. The number of women who are beaten, abused in their homes, even by their husbands, is very, very high. The problem is that, for me, it is almost satanic because it has taken advantage of the weakness of those who cannot defend themselves, can only block the blows. It is humiliating, very humiliating. The Pope added that women who have suffered from abusers do not lose their dignity. Violence against women is a serious social problem and a violation of human rights. Today, this topic has ceased to be a taboo, which is why many women do not hesitate to talk about abusive relationships and ways to avoid them. Here's what one ancient Christian saint, Saint John Chrysostom, who lived in the second half of the 4th century, had to say on this subject. I quote, "And to you, husbands, also say I this. Make it a rule that there can be no such offense as to bring you under the necessity of striking a wife. And why I say a wife, since not even upon his handmaiden could a free man endure to inflict blows and lay violent hands. But if the shame to be great for a man to beat a maidservant, much more to stretch forth the right hand against her that is free." A board game for learning the Church Slavonic in an accessible form has been released in Ukraine. The game is called Rci, which in Church Slavonic means speak. The game helps to easily master the alphabet, the names of letters, memorize more than 330 basic words and phrases of the Church Slavonic translation of the Bible. All words are transcribed into modern Russian, and the quiz will allow players to learn basic information on the history and grammar of Church Slavonic in a playful way. The authors of the game hope that Rci will help children and adults to enrich their vocabulary and increase their interest in language and history. Having met with a delegation of the non-recognized Macedonian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople continued to follow the path of papacy and orthodoxy and, with the support of the West, create new schisms. Serbian political analyst Željko Injec stated this in an interview with Sputnik Serbia. In mid-December, Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople received a delegation from the non-recognized Macedonian Orthodox Church. The meeting took place in Istanbul. Mr. Ignatz noted that the Patriarchate of Constantinople sees itself as a key element of world orthodoxy, where the ecumenical patriarch is the Orthodox Pope, without whom no issue can be resolved. The scholar suggested that if the autocephaly of the so-called Macedonian Orthodox Church is recognized, it will be done according to the same scenario as the Thomas of the so-called Orthodox Church of Ukraine. It will be a kind of semi-autocephaly, which essentially means complete dependence on the ecumenical patriarchate in every aspect. At the moment, added Ignatz, even some of the Ukrainian schismatics are protesting and rejecting such autocephaly. On December 15th, Bishop Panteleimon of Verea, chairman of the Synodal Department for Church Charity and Social Ministry, met with the leadership of the European Bureau of the World Health Organization, Hans Klug. The main topic of the meeting was the ministry of priests and volunteers in the COVID red zones of hospitals and spiritual support for patients with the coronavirus. Bishop Panteleimon noted that Russia is gradually gaining an understanding of the need for not only doctors but also priests to participate in the hospital ministry. He said that the pandemic threatens not only the physical health of a person but also destroys their mental health. Mr. Hans Klug, director of the World Health Organization's European office, noted the importance of spiritual support for the sick, which is provided by representatives of the Russian Church. He praised the effectiveness of the special teams of clerics who provide spiritual support and guidance to patients with COVID-19. At the same time, he said that the Church helps to find consolation not only for patients, but also for medical personnel. Let us remind you that since March 2020, special groups of priests and their assistants have been created in many dioceses to visit the sick people in the so-called COVID red zones. In the Moscow region alone, in the time period between April 2, 2020 and December 17, 2021, such a group has visited COVID patients 4,639 times. In Yekaterinburg, Rostov-on-Don, and Moscow, admission to special courses of Orthodox volunteers is continuing. In Moscow, courses are organized at the training center of the Hospital of St. Alexei of Moscow. After completing these courses, hundreds of Orthodox volunteers begin to participate in the care of patients in COVID hospitals. In addition, the largest medical institution of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Central Clinical Hospital of St. Alexei of Moscow, has been actively engaged in the process of diagnosing and treating the coronavirus infection since the beginning of the pandemic. The hospital treats people from all regions of Russia absolutely free of charge, regardless of their religious affiliation. Well, this is all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on The Orthodox View.